welcome back to our House of David, David God's King. We're doing a quick short series as to help enlighten family of God on how to benefit from this remarkable historical man that has touched Israel. We left off where his brothers were not one of them, even though the oldest three were soldiers, were not the ones that God had chosen. And David was a man after God's own heart, is what he told the prophet Samuel. And when David came, they anointed him, and nothing changed. David went back to take care of sheep. Often when God calls us and anoints us, we expect people to celebrate and to hear the prophetic word and to think, well, we need to be recognized and known by everybody. But then nothing changes. You go right back to taking care of the sheep, and you just where you were before. The only difference is in the heavenlies, something took place. So when God anoints you, when God works in you, don't be reactionary concerned because you haven't seen the changes yet. God doesn't move fast. He certainly moves suddenly. So be alert to that. So David went back to the field now, having been anointed publicly in front of his brothers, prophesied over he'd be the next king. That's no small prophecy. That's a huge thing. And you'd think his brothers would actually favor him because of it. That's what I would have thought, that the boys would have said, okay, David, come join us here and become friends with him. But they did not like him. We find even when he came with the keeper of suppliers and brought food, and he was asking after all the different things that would take place with King Saul and this giant man called Goliath, asking, his oldest brother got arrogantly angry and said, who have you left those few sheep with? He was talking down to him, belittling him, had no regard for him. So you'd think because they'd heard the prophecy of the main prophet, saw the anointing, they'd have some regard, but they just didn't. Something about David was not likable to their brothers. And it was because, first of all, we seem to know that it wasn't, his mother was probably not a Jew, and he was just disqualified in their natural mind, and somehow his joy and happiness made them crazy. Anyway, David takes care of the sheep again, and there's a funny thing how the anointing works in your life and waits for the opportunity to show itself. I'm always interested and excited and alarmed, or call whatever you like, at Saul, who himself as king now has lost the anointing. He's still king. That's what happens when you lose the anointing and you lose the authority. The gift or the ministry still stays, but it's like having a car without any fuel. So Saul had this troubling always in his heart, and somehow David got on schedule to play in the afternoons and his worship music on his little instrument, an instrument that other musicians in Saul's employ had too, but this particular David, when he played, such a difference was made because the anointing inside of him made the difference. So please hear today, whatever God has done in your life, when you give it to other people, whatever ministry you have, your ministry may be good, but the truth is that whatever is inside of you is what the people get too. They don't only get your gifting and your abilities, they get what's inside of you. And that's what brought Saul such peace. Now, me, if I had someone playing for me and had an effect in my life, I would have taken note of him. But for some reason, Saul didn't even notice him somehow. The events begin to unfold, as you know, the whole Goliath episode. But if I just can take a sliver out of there to convey a very valuable point, eventually when Saul hears that there is, after all, someone that'll fight Goliath, a most unqualified person, not any of his soldiers, but it's a funny thing, and he comes walking in the tent. There's this young man's day. I think when he comes into the special tent of Saul, Saul would say, David, is that you? Are you the one that's been playing for the instrument for me so often? You'd think he'd recognize him. Didn't recognize him. He asked him who he was, and he explains, I am your servant, the son of Jesse. And he tells of what he does. And even then, King Saul is not impressed with him. Only when he slays Goliath, then David asks, Abner, who is this man? How is this possible? Who is, now he wants to know. So you can be anointed of God. You can have a prophecy. You could be used of God. Your anointing can be benefited by many people and other ministries, and they still don't celebrate or recognize you. And then when something profound dramatically happens, now suddenly everyone notices who you are. When God's timing is, and let me tell you, that God does move suddenly. Who knew when David went with his sandwiches or his little supplies that day sent by his father Jesse to help feed his brothers, he would have had no idea today is going to be my life-changing day that will go down in history for thousands of years. He had no idea. He was just going to do his normal job. He was not prepared for it. It's the most amazing thing that you had David's eldest brother who was very qualified. He was a soldier. And then you had Saul, who was very qualified as a soldier and the king who should have gone to fight Goliath. And then you had David, who's completely unqualified, who's never been trained, never been in an army. He's a young boy. He's just not. All he has is the anointing. So you have Eliab, his oldest brother, who's very professional. In fact, we read he's a fighting soldier. And then he's professionally, but he's unanointed. Then you get Saul, who is also professional, but he's ex-anointed. But then you have David, who's totally unprofessionally anointed. It says a lot for the anointing, even though it seemed to be disregarded in the beginning, with this prophet anointing him and the brothers not regarding him, his dad not celebrating him, the king not even noticing the anointing, until that moment. In our lives, it takes something that you might not like. It takes something dramatic. It takes sometimes even a calamity, a dramatic occurrence for us to be noticed in our anointing. The anointing will speak for itself. In fact, the anointing is waiting for an opportunity to show itself. So wherever you are in your life, don't be frustrated because God's got moments that he's preparing you for. Same with Joseph. He had moments in his life that God prepared him for to be in front of the Pharaoh, fine-tuning his anointing. And so King David, or David as a young boy, shepherd boy, the only thing he'd ever known was taking care of sheep and his slingshot. He was very famous for his slingshot, which is not uncommon for a boy all day with nothing to do. Plenty of ammunition with all these stones near a riverbed, so much to do and just sheep to take care of. He could go from one, he could spend hours and hours. They say that he could shoot so accurately, take a leaf of a tree from a far distance. Interesting to note that when he finally confronted Goliath, he took 5 stones. And I'm very sure he had no concern that he would not use only but 1. We'll be back to our next session. Please follow us, please. I need you to subscribe, tell your friends about this. We're going to be coming through with a lot more helpful teachings and things. Ask us any kind of questions you'd like, write us, and also put your notifications on. This is Ed Trout from Prophetic Life. Glad you joined us today at God's King David.